Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What Do You Say? I'm your host, Frank Termini. Don't have Drew back with me yet today. He's out saving lives. But if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. This way we can notify you of any new content. And we go with back-to-back Terminis. One, there's no relation to us.
What?
No, that kid's not related to us.
What Termini?
So the Termini that I just had on.
Oh, Joseph.
Yes, his grandfather is the barber, Vince.
Yes.
But I don't believe they're related to
I
us.
agree with you, but
Yeah.
I know those folks because they grew up on the same street I did when they came to this country.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very nice. Here, you ought to listen. This kid, he's going to do some big things. I mean, he won a People's Choice Award. He's a content creator, but he also did an independent film, and he won a People's Choice Award. He's only 18 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that podcast was, a total different side of the spectrum than what we're going to talk about. So you have been a pharmacist how long?
I'd say my internship as a student started somewhere around 1976.
Okay. So here we ought to introduce you, Chuck Termini. Chuck Termini, been a pharmacist. You said since 76.
Yeah, then licensed in 1979 and started that part. We're related.
We are.
Yeah, we're related.
No, I know we are.
You know how we're related?
My grandpa and yours are first cousins.
Okay, this may not be true, but I think your grandpa,
Maybe it's
Frank,
and maybe it's your dad.
and my dad.
There it is. Maybe it's your dad. Our first cousins. Yeah.
That was a generation of great people.
And so you have a brother who's also named Frank Joseph Termini.
I do have a brother, Frank Anthony Termini.
Okay, there is another Frank Joseph Termini, and his father's name is George Termini, just like mine.
All right. Are you ready for another Frank Termini?
There's another Frank Termini.
There's going to be coming in probably May this year.
Oh, you got another one. So here, my son's Frankie George Termini. Yeah, because my dad didn't want a George.
But got a George.
There's Gianna.
Gianna.
There's Gianna. That's how we realized that he didn't want a George, because we were going to name Gianna Georgiana.
So this new Frank Termini is probably going to be a Frankie Termini. That's one of the names in the mix.
Right.
God willing, everything works out.
Yeah. So my son, I told my wife, I said, if we're going to name him Frankie George, we're going to call him Frankie George. So we call him Frank. I mean, all his coaches, his friends, everyone calls him Frankie George. So that's how we did that.
We've crossed paths many times, but never sat down and visited.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, and unfortunately, I wish my brother could have been here.
I do too. I've never laid eyes on this man.
Yeah.
But everybody asks me when I've seen. How about Andrew? I've never met.
Yeah.
Frank.
Well, here, there's other Terminis.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Chris Termini was a very good football player. Played football at Northwest Missouri State University. Played in 3 or 4 national championships.
Had him to my home recently to visit like this.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Now, are they related to us?
Yes.
They are. Okay.
First cousins.
Okay, I don't know how. And then he has a brother named Nick. Okay, now the way I met Nick was Andrew and Nick played football together at William Jewell. So it wasn't until we were in our 20s that I even knew who the kid was. Crazy.
We have relatives in the Catholic Church that were nuns.
Sister Teresa.
Sister Angelita, Sister Stephanie were first cousins.
So there was 3.
There were 3 Terminis.
That were nuns.
And in St. Andrew's Church, there's a little, you've seen that?
No.
No, it's a memorial to Sister Teresa Termini.
Yeah.
You walk in the church to your immediate right, it's the first memorial.
I have to look at that because
Yes.
that's my grandfather's sister.
Yes.
Yeah. She was a sweet, sweet lady. Sweet lady. Every time I would serve in Mass, she would come. She would come every single time I'd serve in Mass.
That's awesome.
So, pharmacist for years upon years upon years. So there was two things. There's actually a lot that we can really discuss, but time's going to limit us. But two things I really wanted to dive into and get your. I want to be careful with the word opinion because I know this is a touchy subject for people, but your thoughts on the COVID vaccine, your expert professional opinion on the COVID vaccine, and why you chose early retirement versus complying with the mandate.
Thanks for the question. Very much, because just to put a little bit of perimeter around that, and then maybe expand the perimeter. These are conversations I think people in our community, relatives, friends, should have every day. There's no reason why I couldn't be invited to a relative's Christmas party because the call 30 minutes before was, were you vaccinated?
It's absurd.
It's absurd, but I have to respect it.
No, it's
I do.
Here's my frustration with this. So I remember I had this young girl working for me at the time. She's pregnant. And the OBGYN tells her it is completely safe to be vaccinated. And my frustration is you have healthcare professionals making incredibly bold statements like that when there is no way to safely make that statement without time. You have to have time. Chuck, here, thalidomide. Great drug for morning sickness, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Great drug for morning sickness, wasn't it?
Wait a few years and find out that it's toxic as hell.
It did cause the most horrific birth effects ever seen.
Made full circle, and now it's a cancer treatment.
Now it's an anti-angiogenesis therapy. Yeah. Okay, but you can't have it around pregnant people.
Correct.
Yeah, it can't even be in the same house as a pregnant person. But we thought it was the greatest drug for morning sickness in the 60s. Okay, so and people's argument, well, you get the flu shot. The first bivalent flu shot comes out in the 1940s. It's 80 years of time to know that there is no long-term effects of the flu shot. Now, you tell me how a healthcare professional can look their patients in the eye and tell you this is safe.
I agree with you that you shouldn't take that path. There's no question about it. And I think one of the guardrails that professionals that speak of this stuff point the other way. They'll say, FDA says, and that's their guardrail. And so standard of care guidelines is what insurance companies want you to follow. If you go outside these guardrails, then maybe you're the company that you work for may have a conversation with you about treating, outside those guidelines. But you asked me the question, and I think it was an opinion. And I think before our get together today, you said, Chuck, I think I want you to speak of this, but you could take it in a direction you'd like to go.
Take it where you want it.
So I think before you even start the conversation about what that is that just happened in 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, you got to follow the money. Before you start the conversation about what were mask mandates, before you talk about social distancing, before you talk about anything you heard online or on TV about how this should be conducted, before you even talk about, I need to get the COVID shot, before you talk about taking Paxlovid. Paxlovid is, at this point in time, the medication that's prescribed if you first start getting the COVID symptoms. You want to take this medication within 5 days for two reasons: decrease death and decrease hospitalizations. Now, if your physician tells you that's why you take it, are you going to take it?
Am I
Are
personally
you
going
going
to
to take it?
Me?
Decrease death, decrease hospitalization.
I'm not, because I've already had COVID twice, and the vaccine made me more sick than when I had the damn virus.
Okay. So if you knew Paxlovid was an HIV drug, would you take it?
If I had HIV,
No. If you had COVID, would you please take this HIV drug?
I can't see a day where I would decide that that's okay. I really can't.
So,
and here the reason why I'm saying this is because I was one of the very fortunate people. Like here, you and I both know people who got really, really sick from COVID. There's no doubt.
absolutely.
There's
Deaths.
Death. Like it killed some healthy people that I thought, like here, I'll be honest with you. The people that I thought if they got it were going to die made it through it. And then the people who, that I thought were strong as oxes, it intubated them, and one of them killed him, right? And so it was very weird how it transpired and how it unfolded. Me personally, I was super, super tired for like a month. I'm not even kidding you. When I had COVID, and my wife and I both had it at the same time twice. Neither one of us had any respiratory symptoms. I fell to the mandate. I was scared because Medicare had indicated they were not going to pay me unless I was vaccinated by November of 2021, I believe it was.
November 12th.
Is that what it? Okay.
So last day on the job for me.
And so I run my numbers, and I said, well, shit, I'm going to lose 25% of my business. It was anywhere between 25 and 33% over the course of 10 years. So I'm like, okay, 27%. I can't afford to lose 27% of my business. So what did I do? I took the jab. And my wife's like, okay, well, if you're taking it, I'm taking it. So, we both took it.
Great point. Because if I could get back to your original question of me is why I chose to retire rather than meet that deadline with taking the COVID vaccine. I want to go on that, and then I'd like to take it to another point. So I have a lot of thanks to give to my family, who at the time were not in healthcare, but said, my wife Angela said, Chuck, I don't think we should do this. She was diagnosed with breast cancer about 20 years ago. And with breast cancer, you have all this journey to take with, should I get radiation? Should I get chemotherapy? Breast cancer, do I want to have eradication, breast mastectomy? Which way would you go? So we have a very open relationship. She wanted me to participate in it.
Sure.
In that decision. So you go to, different oncologists, treatments, and then you know what the ultimate is? What do you want to do? That's what I pay you for. You give me your best assessment of what Angela and I should do for her breast cancer.
The question I always ask them, what would you do if it was your wife? Tell me what you would do if it was your wife.
Exactly.
Now, I don't have to follow it, but what would you do?
So between us, we had a decision-making process, much like COVID. So between the two of us, we decided, maybe we shouldn't. But my children, Jennifer, Ashley, and Jeffrey, said, don't do it. Definitely do not do it. And I think in far as outside the bubble of what you and I do, which is, medical guidance, journals, this and that, they had a little bit of an insight into what was going on socially, listening to what other people were saying and what they were reading about. But ultimately, it was my decision that I wouldn't do it. In fact, I remember the day I was walking down the hallway to go get this vaccine, and I'm so conflicted, and I go, no. And I turned around, and because I was the last person in my department not to get vaccinated, I remember the supervisor in the department says, Chuck, you answered the form, you're not going to get it. I says, yep, I'm not a sheep. I'm not going to be herded into something that, and at that time, it was not emergency use only. Then it became emergency use only. And you either stay, so you had a religious objection, or you had some type of allergy to it. And I fell out. I said, I have neither of those. I'm just not going to do it.
Right.
And it was with reservation. But my gut told me that my wife and I had made a decision much earlier on a similar medication issue or treatment. And that's what we came up with. We decided on our own. We had a choice. So my choice was not to. Now, fortunate for me, I was able to take a retirement, to this day, I still work about 4 days a week, 4 days a month at a little small pharmacy. And I'm so glad I did, because now I've got the backlash of what's been going on with COVID, and it's just amazing. But that's the reason why I made those decisions at that time. And over the course of, well, hell, I saw you at a,
North Kansas City Hospital.
yeah. And I was there for my wife's appointment for something. And I said, did you know that now I'm going off the rails here a little bit.
Go ahead.
I said, did you know the package insert for the Moderna Spike Vac has a patient package insert in it? Federal law requires every prescription medication to have a manufacturer's package insert in it, giving full side effects, full studies, full information, excluding everything. So what do you see in that package insert?
Intentionally blank.
And what's the dimensions of that package insert? If you open it all up.
I mean, Jiminy Christmas. What is it?
It's
3 by 1?
Yep.
3 feet by 1 foot?
Intentionally left 100% blank. No information, no print. Every medication, the FDA requires everyone in the packaging that must come to the pharmacy with the medication. So, why? So if you email the manufacturer, Moderna, the answer that comes back is it's left there for the intended purpose of padding the product in shipment to the pharmacy. I couldn't tell you why. So there's just questions that the right people should ask. And I think when an opposition has you asking the wrong questions, there's no reason to know what the right answer is, because you got them asking the wrong questions. So I'm asking the question, why isn't that having print on it? Why does the manufacturer do that? I think that's the wrong question. I think the real question is why did they get away with doing that?
Right.
Did you know, and I'm going to get into this, manufacturers and pharmacy benefits managers, those are the people that go to your insurance company and create the deal with, here's our market share. We're going to save you, whatever large corporation you are, we're going to save you money on your health insurance. They use tools that are called, yeah, you might as well do that. They use tools called, and I made some notes here, just utilization management tools. That's how they explain to employers about how they're going to manage their prescription benefits. We're going to use these tools to manage your benefits. And that manufacturers and PBMs are totally 100% PBMs.
Tell me what it means.
I will.
Okay.
Those folks are completely 100% guarded from, I guess the term that anti-kickback legislation. So some years ago.
Wait a second. They're shielded from anti-kickback legislation.
That means
they can do kickbacks.
They can do kickbacks. They absolutely can do kickbacks. Every medication in this country that goes through third-party commercial insurance goes through a PBM, I can give you the names, and manufacturers that all get kickbacks.
How is that not violating? That almost seems like it could fall even under a Stark.
Stark was an early law,
right? Because it's that would ultimately be a referral.
Yes.
That you would generate revenue from.
Yes.
So
in your field, yes.
That still has to fall. That would fall under a Stark law, wouldn't it?
You got me on that.
I mean, you tell me what the difference is between me telling an orthopedic surgeon, you send me all your patients, and for every patient you send me, I'll give you X.
That's exactly the same scenario, except manufacturers, health insurance companies, forgot that one, and these pharmaceutical benefit managers are exempt from. Go ahead, do your kickbacks. It's okay.
I'm
Now,
trying to think why the government is benefiting from that.
I want to tell you. So the presentation in brief, what I want to give you is a presentation that I have never given to anyone other than you today. But throughout state legislation and federal Congress, this presentation has been given hundreds of times. So if there's anything I would say to your listeners, call your senator, call your congressman, and say, stop PBM practices. Stop.
What does PBM stand for?
Okay, let's get there. Pharmaceutical benefits managers.
Okay.
Okay, so
what? Drug manufacturers, health insurance companies.
Yes.
Drug manufacturers, health insurance companies, and pharmaceutical sales are exempt from kickbacks. Okay. I'm trying to.
Yes.
I have to follow you here, Chuck.
All right.
Okay, so I want to keep that on my back burner right there.
Please do.
Okay. And the government, federal government, is allowing this. There is no law, such as a Stark law, to inhibit this practice.
Now, when you bring in the Stark law, I don't know exactly what that is.
The Stark law is basically saying physicians cannot refer if they're getting financial benefit from the referral.
Okay. Thank you for that definition, because I think it certainly is in line with what I'd like to explain. So it's just at a different level downstream from what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I remember, so you can't give lunches anymore.
So here's the thing. They mandate how much money you can spend per referral source. So you can, so let's say I go in and I do a $300 lunch for 10 doctors. Okay. I spent $30 a doc. Okay. And they'll
They have to sign.
Yeah, everybody got to sign in and out and all that, and and then you turn all that stuff into your account.
What happens to those signatures? Are they audited, or you just have to have it if they ask?
I was audited, but I hired a lady who was a former Medicare auditor to audit me every 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
I paid her to do it. This way I knew if the feds came in, I was going to mitigate my risk. Now, they're always going to stick something in you. They're going to find a way to hit you a little bit. But I knew I was going to mitigate my risk if she came in, because she would just come in, clean everything up, dot I's, cross T's, and put my head on the pillow at night.
And what year did that start?
What year did I start doing?
In your practice that you started very consciously protecting yourself from Stark law?
Well, I wasn't ever concerned about Stark law. I was, because I knew I wasn't, there was no kickbacks for me.
Oh, okay.
I was never.
But even to the extent of offering someone a lunch, you were auditing, or you were protecting yourself from that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I had all that stuff documented. That was easy. But I wasn't ever concerned about that. I was more concerned about overbilling, underbilling, correct documentation, correct policy and procedure manuals, all that bullshit, right? And they'd nitpick on every little thing, but she would come in every 6 months, audit all my charts, audit all my billing. Half the time I was underbilling, which, believe it or not, is just going to get you in just as much trouble as overbilling.
Yes. Crazy.
And so I ended up having to hire an attorney to review all my insurance contracts and tell me exactly how to bill per every single insurance. And then we would do in-services. And it's a pain in the ass. I mean, it is what it is. But I was never worried about a kickback. I knew that was never going to happen. Right. But what I'm trying to figure out is why the federal government has to be benefiting from this.
Absolutely.
Some way.
Absolutely.
In order for them to let that slide.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. So let me get back to the question. You asked, what is a pharmacy benefits manager?
There you are.
All right. Pharmacy benefits manager, by definition, are companies that manage prescription drug benefits on the behalf of health insurers, Medicare Part D, large employers, others, and payers. And what PBMs do, pharmaceutical benefits managers, this is typically an electronic process that happens behind the scenes electronically. When you walk into a retail pharmacy and you hand off or your prescription shows up electronically and you see someone looking down at a computer screen, just type it away. So what they're doing is processing the information about what the physicians, by the way, physicians typically in this plan, in this model, only suggest what prescription that patient's going to get. Because the PBM is going to tell you, nah, it's not covered. And you've come across that.
Sure. But we'll cover this one.
But we'll cover this one.
Right.
So I'm not going to be
Right.
telling you anything you don't know.
Right.
I'm just trying to outline how COVID and the drugs used to manage this pandemic could fit the conversation for why all this weird shit happened.
Hold on. And why ivermectin and what was that other one that they were using?
Hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine were shunned.
Well, let me just answer that to my best of right now. You could not get emergency use only for these medications to treat COVID unless those were not recommended.
Say that again. I lost you.
If hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were not stated to be used for COVID, the vaccines could have never gotten emergency use only status.
So they had to shun ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine in order to make a pathway for the vaccine.
Yes.
Okay. Because my mother is not vaccinated, refused to ever get vaccinated, is furious that my wife and I and my brother, who's a Kansas City fireman, got vaccinated.
Was he mandated?
Andrew was mandated. Yeah, Andrew was mandated. I was mandated. Michelle was just like, hey, whatever you do, I'm doing.
Right.
Right.
I trust you, is what she was saying. I trust.
Hold on. I told her, I am making this decision based on finances for our family. I'm not making this decision because I think the fucking vaccine is a good decision for me.
Disclaimers. Let's go through the disclaimers.
I mean,
what are we supposed to say here? As
you can say whatever you want to say.
What are we supposed to say?
I mean,
Because my guy from Pharmacist Mutual, my liability insurance, was the call I was taking before I got, and I'm still waiting.
I mean, you could say whatever you want to say, but I'm telling you. So here, if you were to come to me and say, "Hey, your kid's got to be vaccinated in order to go to school," my kids are getting homeschooled. That's how against the vaccine I am. I shouldn't say that. For me and my family,
Exactly.
I don't care what anyone else does.
Exactly.
Okay, but that's how against it I am. So, no, that was strictly a financial decision. That was not a health decision for me. I could not afford to lose 27% of my business at that time. I couldn't.
Your profession needs to have a commodity so you can have tiered pricing on it, so that you could adjust the price, the list price of a particular product.
Hold on. You want to talk about some bullshit? The big companies, the Select Physical Therapies of the world, the Circs of the world, okay, they make 33% more than I was making for doing the exact same service.
How's that?
Thank you. Thank you. So when they came in and bought me, they looked at my numbers and said, okay, well, we can afford to pay X because you're getting this much a visit, and we could immediately come in and make 33% more on it. Excuse me. Right. So
Who's the payer? Who's the payer?
Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, United Healthcare, you name it.
So those people subsidize those better payments at the expense of your inexpensive. They pay you less so they can pay them more.
Right.
Same story, Frank.
So
Same story.
So that's like saying, hey, Paul's Liquor, you could sell this bottle of beer for $1, but Hy-Vee, you could sell the bottle of beer for $1.33. I mean, that's ultimately what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No
Right.
question about it.
So there's the health and the health that space is designed for the corporation to thrive.
I agree with you 100%.
It's not designed for the little guy to thrive. It's not. You can make a living. You'll grind your life into oblivion. You'll work 12-hour days. It'll be a lifestyle business. It'll be, you know, and you could make $250,000 a year. You can make that.
You know what I started out making in pharmacy in $9.50 an hour.
Yeah.
UPS drivers were making a much better living than I was, which started.
You're seeing a paradigm shift where people are realizing, why am I going to go to college? Why?
Oh,
I'm going to go spend $80,000 to get a business degree and go make $40,000 a year at Cerner.
and that is the right question to ask. So in that perspective, when people are able to ask themselves the right question,
Yeah.
when they got you asking the wrong question, there's no reason to have a true answer.
The only reason why I would tell my kids, there's two reasons I would tell them to go to college. One, go play sports. Play for as long as you can.
Right.
Two, you're going to go be some type of a professional. If you're going to go get a business degree and you're going to go join a frat and do all that shit, you're paying for it. I'm not. I'm not doing it. I'm not paying for you to go do that and get indoctrinated in the absolute travesty of shit that they're trying to indoctrinate you in.
I do not disagree with that.
And
Not at all.
Here, you could go get a trade and make 6 figures immediately. You could go work at Ford and make 6 figures right now. And have the best health insurance that you could even think about. You know, go get a trade, go learn to be a welder, an electrician, a carpenter, a bricklayer. I mean, go learn something like that. And you could go make a plumber, whatever. You can make a ton of money. Those guys make tons of money.
And probably happy with what they're doing.
Yes.
You know, just let your body outlast your profession.
You know.
So you asked me a couple really great questions.
Sorry, go on.
No.
On a tangent.
And so to frame it, I think, again, like I was saying, the questions that we have asked ourselves over the past 3 or 4 years can be looked at, maybe not in a different light, but this is a model that these other people that have given this presentation have explained, could just give you more insight into what the hell was all that, and why were there mask mandates, and why were you supposed to 6 feet apart, and why, you know, certain things were done. You had to wash, to a certain extent, you know, the history of virology and, you know, studying bacteria, those were practices that made sense. But to the extent that this is, I just want to make a case that this could be something that could be looked at and explained. You know, I think this could be looked at in a different light. Let's do it that way. So we were talking about what PBMs are, and what they do is they manage prescriptions for these big companies. You know, Medicare Part D, which is for people over 65 that have Medicare, their prescriptions get covered under a certain degree, okay? Health insurance, large plans. But what the PBM, pharmacy benefits managers do, they're like a liaison between the employer who has to spend a lot of money on health benefits and the insurers, you know, the health insurance companies.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Not
so
the insured. Okay, so between health insurance companies and employers, then there's the PBM right in the middle.
Exactly.
Got it.
And oh, by the way,
they're communicating back and forth.
Yes. Hey,
they're wheeling and dealing.
Big company over here. You've got 1,000 employees, and you offer this prescription insurance benefits. We're going to save you money by managing the prescriptions that get filled at a particular pharmacy by saving you money. So 80% of all commercial insurance is managed by Cigna, Aetna, Humana, United Healthcare, and Blue Cross. And to some smaller degree, there's other smaller ones.
Well, and then hold on. Aetna, Cigna, and United are all capitated insurance plans.
What does that mean?
What it means is no matter what you do with the patient, they're paying you a fee, flat fee. Doesn't
Flat
matter
fee.
what it is.
Okay, let's bring this better.
Which is a horrible, horrible word. Then you got your Humana Medicare replacement plan who takes what Medicare would pay the provider and then pays the provider a discounted rate.
Okay, we have a discussion.
Which is a dick sandwich.
We have two professions very much tied together that the mafia figured out a long time ago, and these motherfuckers decided this is how we're going to do it.
Listen to me. That's all they are. They're gangsters that figured out how to make it legal. They were the smart gangsters. That's it. They're just, that's it. They're gangsters.
Yep. I relate.
Yeah.
Although, yeah.
I'm jealous. I mean, you're talking about multi-billions of dollars.
Okay, thank you for framing that. Thank you very much for framing it that way. So let's talk about and we're going to go. So this is what pharmacy benefits managers do. They adjudicate prescription claims. So when you walk in a pharmacy and you see everybody looking down at a computer screen, they're entering the information, and electronically in split microseconds, information is being sent out to a database of every patient that's on third-party insurance for prescriptions exists. Every payer for every other insurance company. So that's what they do. They say, okay, let's go take this online and see what comes back. Can we fill your prescription? Does your copay apply? So what they do is then determine what the patient's copay is going to be for paying for that prescription. You're familiar with copay, right?
Oh,
okay. You have an understanding of what co-insurance is. Let's say,
sure.
So for me to get this
80% co-insurance means, or 20% co-insurance means they'll cover 80%, I'll cover 20%, but that's after your deductible's met.
Thank you very much for highlighting this, because that's exactly where we're going with this.
Right. So the deductibles may be like here, my deductible for my insurance here, I'll just be very transparent. My insurance was more than my mortgage. It's $2,300 a month. I had a $1,500 deductible and then an 80-20 policy. So after I met the $1,500 per person, then the insurance would cover 80% and I was responsible for 20%.
All right.
Up until I met a $5,000 out-of-pocket max.
This is the type of conversation I need to have with someone like yourself who can shed light on the realities of when someone walks into that retail prescription pharmacy and says, what is my co-insurance? So here's what PBMs do. I'll jump ahead. PBMs say, you know, these cards that people get copay from a manufacturer that says, oh, here's 25% off on, here's pay 25%. Pay $25 on this Humira. This is a thousands and thousands of dollar drug. But, you're only going to pay $25 for it. How the hell does that happen?
Right.
Here's what happened. That whole cost of that drug does not go towards your co-insurance. That does not go to your deductible.
Where's it going? Who's paying it?
Your insurance company is absorbing it along with the PBM and the manufacturer and the insurance company. So I'm gonna let you pay maybe $200 less, but you're not gonna apply any of that to your I'll get closer to this.
So basically what's happening is now that cost, you're paying it the $25, but it's not going to the $1,500 deductible.
Exactly. You just got screwed.
So it's dead weight. That'd be the same thing as me saying, here, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go, you got a $1,500 deductible, okay? Just pay me cash under the table, okay? Now they just gave me, say, $100 a visit for 12 visits. They gave me $1,200, but they still got this $1,500. That's not benefiting the patient at all.
That's the problem. The patient doesn't benefit. Now let's put it this way. Let me just not retract, but let me just do a little bit of a little bit go down this list, but say, yes, there are some good things that pharmacy benefit managers do. And in the scheme of things, it is the correct thing for a major employer to do to reduce their costs. But these are just some of the subtleties that go along with this.
The employer's got to be taken out of the equation. The employer's looking at one thing and one thing only, cost.
Yes.
That's it. Here, for me personally, I was always looking at cost and are my employees and their families going to be taken care of? Because I had a lot of employees leave me because health insurance is cheaper at a bigger company than it was with me, which is also another strike against the small business guy. So now not only is the small business guy getting 33% less reimbursement from the insurance company, but the small business guy is paying more for health insurance for him and his employees.
At the expense of somebody else getting a better price.
Right. And so I said, here, I bet I had 10 people leave say, hey, you know what? I love working here, but your percentage of my insurance and their percentage of my insurance is, and they get better coverage.
What a commodity.
It's a big deal.
What a great thing to football.
But there's not a level playing field.
There's never going to be a level playing field. There's never going to be a level playing field. So to move this along just a little bit further, these are great conversations because they really do open up where this, it's my hope, could open up some eyes. So the other thing pharmacy benefit managers do is they bring access of patients to insurance companies. Well, that's not it. They bring access to patients to people that sell product. So say, for example, the small little pharmacy on the corner over here, their problem is they don't have access. One of the problems is they don't have access to patients that are on that insurance plan. They don't have access. So they want access. And I'll get in a little bit more into that.
No, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
You don't have access to patients.
I was denied access to Cigna, and I was denied access to Cigna and what was the other insurance company? I think it was Humana for the first 4 or 5 years of my practice. They weren't allowing any new providers into their network. Right? So now there's this medium that's opening up access to these folks, is what you're saying to me.
We're in the same church. Let's get in the same pew. All right. So what other things this pharmacy benefit managers does is they construct and maintain all this information. The PBMs create pharmacy benefits managers in conjunction with, and I'll get into this, the insurance companies and even manufacturers. They create this space that is controlled and molded in such a way that they keep people out. So who are these players? Who are the PBMs? Well, just to cut to the chase, we already mentioned that 80% of these insurers insure about 80% of all the people on commercial insurance. Let's leave government employees out to the side because they do not have government. They have their own government plan, and there's other types that are out. I'm just talking about your commercial insurance that get prescriptions through, say, a Cigna health plan, who is married to Express Scripts. So these are the folks that have created their own, business model and their own relationship. So Cigna is tied to Express Scripts, which is a PBM, and their pharmacy is called Accredo. Aetna is tied to CVS Caremark, and their pharmacy is CVS Specialty. United Healthcare is married to Optum RX,
right,
and their specialty is Bravava. I may have pronounced that incorrectly. Humana is tied to Humana RX, and they have Humana Specialty drugs. Blue Cross is tied to Prime. Now, these relationships were not always in existence. Let me digress just for a minute. Do you remember just in our neighborhood, in our community of people in Kansas City, when pharmacies had corner drugstores that were independently owned?
Yeah, so the one that I can remember vividly was, I think he may still be there, Spolito.
Spolito.
Yeah.
Survivor.
Yeah.
What a survivor.
Yeah.
Great guy, great business.
Yeah.
I wish them, 1,000 more years of business.
Yeah.
But they are an outlier of how they have survived.
Yeah.
They have great loyalty, and can't say enough about those folks. But in our community, what happened to some of the independent drugstores, and what are the names of the ultimate winners that survived all these buyouts? Look, just in your neighborhood, what stores do you see? What pharmacies do you see?
It's Walgreens and CVS.
Walgreens. Those are the ultimate
Walmart.
winners.
Yeah.
Outlier.
It's an out. Okay.
Okay, do you know where the $4 prescription came from? They said, fuck all this shit. We're just going to sell it to you for cash. They knew their business model would support a $4 prescription for a month's supply because they could pay pennies for that prescription.
Right.
You know, I can walk into a store right now. It's a Sam's Club who's associated with the Walmart organization. I can get a month's supply of lisinopril for free. 1 month of 20 milligram lisinopril for free. No charge. Because they know patients typically in my age group take a slew of other medications. And that's just a loss leader for them. So early on, they knew and they saw.
It's bait. It's bait.
It's bait. But you know, I'm still going there. And it's the pharmacist's pharmacy, in my opinion, this particular pharmacy I go to. But anyway, so the point being that they created.
What were the other private owns? I can't remember them. Was Revco a privately owned one?
Absolutely not. They got sucked up into CVS ultimately.
Okay.
And I could show you a chart over a period of time.
And then there was that one guy that was in Doc Cicero's office. He was privately owned.
Yep.
Can't remember his name.
I don't. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll buy out the independent guy, and you never know where ultimately the prescription files go.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of
the only one I remember is Spalito.
Okay, so just typically around town, Crown Drugs was a pharmacy forever.
Okay.
How about Nigro's Drugs?
Okay, Nigro.
How about Gravine? Now these are pharmacies that are like from the 60s and the 50s. They got absorbed and probably picked up by other independent pharmacies. But ultimately, the winners are CVS and Walgreens in this particular market. The winners. Interesting that during that same period of time, those pharmacies being bought out were being bought up by Express Scripts, Cigna, being bought up by Aetna, CVS, being bought up by United Optum, being bought. So now they own the pharmacy, they own the PBM, and they own the insurance. And I'll get into how those things all are a circular same pocket. It's the same. It does sound corrupt, but they're shielded from anti-kickback legislation.
Why? Why is the government benefiting from that?
Anybody listening to this needs to call their senator or their congressman, because this is a fight that's been being fought since 1960. Why is it that over...
So you don't know the answer to the question.
I don't.
Yeah.
But I think you could probably figure it out. It's all about the money.
So could they potentially be giving kickbacks to the federal government in return?
Let me proceed.
That has to be it. There's no other reason.
Yes, absolutely. I think every senator and congressman should wear the uniforms that race car drivers wear.
Yeah.
And they have whoever, this company, that company.
Right.
When they walk into a place, they should have all those patches on them, who they represent them.
Yeah. Well, because, let's look at the opiate industry. Look what happened to the opiate industry from 1995 to 2001. It went from $1 million industry to $1 billion industry in 6 years.
How can that happen?
Well, because I'll tell you what happened. JCO and the Accreditation Commission made pain a fifth vital sign.
Repeat that.
ACHC and JCO made pain a fifth vital sign. So now, what did doctors have to do when someone complained of pain? They had to treat it. What's the fastest way to do it? Here.
Write the prescription.
Write the prescription. So it was that simple. It was heart rate, blood pressure, O2 sat, temperature. And then there was pain.
Today, as we sit here and speak, you know what the top 3 drug classes are that are dispensed in this country are?
Opiates, statins. This is my guess. Opioids, statins. God, what would that third one be?
Opiates, for sure, are.
It's got to be statin.
Antibiotics, for sure. And the third one is, it's probably around the tip, something for chronic disease. I'm sure.
So you don't think it's a statin?
Well, statin is in the category of chronic disease.
All right.
So yes, you're correct. Yes,
okay.
You're correct.
Okay.
And our country, by stats that I'm familiar with, people in the United States, compared to other countries, are probably 10 to 1 in taking prescription medications. 10 to 1. And I think it's even higher.
Well, here, if you watch the Joe Rogan podcast with that Dr. Asim Zamorta, he's a cardiologist. He won't prescribe statins. And he lost his job because of it. He said the benefit of a statin has nothing to do with your cholesterol. The benefit of a statin, if there's anything, is blood thinning properties.
I would not disagree with that.
And my cardiologist doesn't disagree with it either. Matter of fact, my cardiologist, when she took me off of it, because she was looking at my cholesterol was in the 40s, and she's like, that's not good either. She's like, you need cholesterol in your
Absolutely.
body. You know, she said, you're not taking that anymore. She goes, and I don't care if your LDL goes up above 100. And I said, have you ever heard of this doctor? And she said, yes, I know of him very well. So number one, my cardiologist is adamantly against the vaccine. She was mandated as well, adamantly against the vaccine, and is not a proponent of really any medication, but took me off my statin real quick. First thing she did. And the funny thing is, the primary care doctor that gave it to me said, before he even seen the blood work, oh, it's going to be high. The question is how high? And I'm thinking to myself, how do you know that? Well, I'll tell you how he knows it, because he knows that the level to be medicated is so low that anyone could qualify you could justify it.
Standard of care guidelines.
So how many professional athletes are you going to go in, take their blood work, and their LDLs are over 100? Probably a lot of them. And those guys are in fantastic shape. Are you going to put them on a statin?
I don't know. But to that point, and I don't know if this is a cause or effect, like the elevated LDLs, but I do know of a patient, and LDLs, by the way, are the bad cholesterols.
Yeah.
I know of a patient who had elevated LDLs well into the 150s, just came out of the hospital, had a stroke, brain, and is recovering. And that was the marker that was looked at to say, I think there's something here. Why? So,
the question isn't necessarily, so here, you could look at the LDL, but here's the other thing. You have to look at the size of the particle.
Yes, there's VLDLs and so on.
So the real question probably isn't your LDL. It's probably your IP(a).
School me on that.
The IP(a) is going to judge the size of the particle.
Okay.
It's just a blood test that judges the size of the.
I wonder how many folks drill down into that piece and just only look at the LDLs.
And at the end of the day, like, it is something that I watch, because me personally, I'd rather have a heart attack and die than a stroke.
I get that.
I mean, that's a fate worse than death. A bad stroke. Matter of fact, I told my wife, don't ever leave me that way. You know, I was part of a neurosurgical intensive care team, and that's all we treated was stroke patients, and it was fucking horrible.
That's terrible.
It's a terrible.
You had a bird's eye view of action. So we mentioned, just to digress again, we mentioned that a timeline of pharmacies being bought out by these large insurance companies,
right,
and then partnered with pharmacy benefits managers and partnered with manufacturers. So let me digress just a little bit more and talk about that was probably the early 2000s. So there is a correlation to answer the question, why did these things happen, to let anti-corruption, anti-kickback legislation begin. So, and I'm very glad you invited me on here, because it let me go down a couple of rabbit holes to answer questions that I never really would have thought of. So, direct marketing to consumers. When was that permitted?
Oh gosh, Chuck. I mean,
so
every single time there's a commercial on, it's a drug commercial.
All right, so correct. And there's a reason why.
And I don't know when it happened.
I have some information that might be helpful. So in 1997, the FDA issued new guidance that significantly relaxed the requirements for direct to customer marketing ads on TV, leading to the increase in that type of advertising form. Now, direct to customer, direct to buyer, direct to patient advertising began in doctors' offices on magazines that were in the office.
Pamphlets.
Pamphlets.
Right.
Okay. So in 1997, what did that actually do? When they gave carte blanche, you can advertise directly to patients. What would that do? So advertising direct to patients sells more prescriptions, right?
Look at the time frame you're talking
yes.
about. Yes.
So early 2000s. This is where this starts.
But let's look at what I said about the opiate industry.
Yes. We're in the same church here.
Right.
We're gonna change pews a little bit, and it also does what? Remember these words: increase market share, increase the number of prescriptions, and increase market share. Because this formula fits what the PBMs do, and it's a very simple formula: the rebate or the kickback. So the rebate is the list price of the drug that the manufacturer creates.
The list price of the drug that the manufacturer creates. Okay, that's the rebate.
There's a formula.
But that's not what it's getting sold for.
Okay, so the rebate is a sum of three things. Okay? And let's take an example of Paxlovid. Paxlovid has a list price to the pharmacy of $1,500.
$1,500 is what the pharmacy pays the manufacturer.
Correct.
Go on.
Okay. Times the percent of the rebate. Times the number of prescriptions sold. And I'm gonna break this down.
So there's not a flat price. That
absolutely
price,
not.
It's going to change based on the pharmacy and it's all. So the cost of the drug is ultimately dependent on the number of people getting the prescription at the pharmacy.
The rebate is a function of three things. So, and I'll expand this: just list price, percent rebate that's paid, percent, times the number of prescriptions, which means market share. And I'll come back to that.
Wait a second. So the number of prescriptions actually drives the cost of the drug up.
Supply and demand. So here's another example. And I kind of get lost in this, but I made some notes, Frank. And I just hope. So here's drug A, drug B, and drug C. In a commercial third-party insurance, you're a typical guy coming down the street, going into your pharmacy that has insurance for prescriptions, and in good faith, they say, please fill my prescription for me. So keep in mind that drug A has a list price to the pharmacy of $2,000.
Okay.
Say that's a month's supply.
Okay.
All right. And the rebate that the manufacturer of the product is going to pay to the PBM, which is essentially the insurance company,
right,
is 60%.
So you're talking about 60% of 2,000.
The rebate's $1,200.
$1,200. Okay. So now you're looking at $3,200.
Correct.
Go on.
Okay. So drug B, and this is what a formulary is.
Hold on, but you still haven't even, and now the variable is the number of prescriptions written for it. So we don't know what the hell that's going to be.
Okay, so this is the secret contract that goes on between the drug manufacturer,
the PBM,
and the insurance company. This is a hidden contract. Everybody in this drug class.
Is 60% par for the course, or does that vary?
It varies.
Okay.
But so the point to be made
go
is
to drug B.
Drug B costs $4,000 a month.
4 G's. Go on. What's the rebate?
40%.
40%. So it's another $1,600. So you're at $5,600.
Okay.
And then once again, you still have no idea what that other variable is going to be.
Correct. And then say drug.
If you got 100 people, what percentage of the prescription is that normally? So let's say you got 100 people that filled the prescription. What percentage of that 100 is added on to that 5,600? You following what I'm saying? Because it's a function of it, right? There was three things.
Yes. Correct. All right. So let's go to drug C. Okay. And this is how the bidding goes to the PBM, Pharmacy Benefits Manager. The manufacturers of these drugs are hoping and wishing you're going to pick our drug to be dispensed because you're going to go back to the company.
Well, the variable is the percent that you're giving to the PBM.
One more example, and yes, you're correct. So the third drug, C, costs $5,000.
Okay.
And that rebate percent is 40%.
$7,000.
So 40% of 5,000 is
2,000. So
2,000.
it's $7,000.
So the rebate, the PBM is looking, okay, which drug are we going to choose? The one
They're
that's
going to choose drug 3.
drug 3. And what accents? Okay, so just keep that in mind. So it's sort of a shell game.
But they also have to take this into consideration. They also have to take, I have to think, Chuck, that third variable, they may say, well, here, drug 3 off of these two variables is $7,000, but maybe there's only 10,000 prescriptions written for it. Okay. But drug B, that was 5,600, but there's going to be 40,000 prescriptions probably written for it. So that's still going to drive the price up for it, right? Because that's a function of it too. There's that third variable. Don't you think they're probably trying to take that in consideration as well? The bottom line is they're picking the drug not based on your health. They're picking the drug based on lining their pocket.
Frank, you're 100% right.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
You're 100% right.
It has nothing to do with us.
So here's a patient over here that is sick. And they walk into a pharmacy and they drop that prescription card and the doctor wrote the order for this drug. But the PBM says, no, that's not tier 1.
Right, yeah.
You got to take this one. And to get to that one, you got to fail therapy on these other ones before you can get to it.
Right.
And if there is a fee involved in this kickback, that kickback by the PBM can say, we're going to change all this midstream and we're going to drop that drug from the formula. You can't dispense that drug. Unless you pay cash for it.
Yeah.
This is a total crime. And again, this is a presentation that's been given across state legislature, federal government for years and has not been answered because they can't break the anti-kickback harbor that goes on.
So the manufacturer is kicking back to the PBM.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But so the PBM, let me go back to this. The PBM is the liaison between drug manufacturer and insurance company.
Here's the other thing. The PBM and the insurance company are the same thing.
So the PBM is going to say, insurance company, I'm going to save you money. We're going to use this drug and I'm going to send the kickback to the manufacturer. And then the kickback goes from the insurance company to the PBM. So it's going up the chain.
And who else knows what the hell's going on?
But the real question is,
Frank, during COVID,
the manufacturer has to be giving kickbacks to the federal government.
Vice versa. And there's probably a multitude of different ways that this can be done. The idea is that it's not fair. It's not fair to the patient. So let me just run, and I want to come back to this because Frank, you're spot on exactly what's going on with this. So direct to consumer advertising increases the number of prescriptions that are filled, which fits this equation.
Right.
It fits the equation. So when I direct advertise to you at 7 p.m. on a news channel or at 7 p.m. at night, ask your doctor. They're not saying ask your doctor. They're saying go tell your doctor, I want you to increase the number of prescriptions that this drug filled. To cut to the chase, Frank, in my speculation about COVID is that when the manufacturer gets truckloads of cash from the federal government to manufacture this COVID vaccine, and the utilization management tool that was used to increase the number of prescriptions filled could be something that's looked at just like a PBM that says, we're going to use things that make people want to use the medication or to, let me just...
which is why they mandated the vaccine.
And then when you have increased market share of utilization, how do you increase the market share of a product if you have the whole billions of people taking it? Federal government fed the manufacturers money. Make this drug. They increased the market share of patients
By directly marketing to them.
No, they feared them. They put fear into people to take this drug.
Well, there you are. That's even worse.
I'm going to put fear into you. You got to have this drug. You have to. So this model creates this perfect storm of a lot of money going in one direction. Insurance companies, manufacturers,
In the federal government.
I have no clue how much money was spent. I can't even think in terms of that. But where was the government on this? So let's go back to 1997. And there were discussions that were documented on why you should not do direct to consumer advertising. These were discussions. Regulatory authority and concerns on misinformation. So directly marketing a product to a patient can create misinformation. And here's some of the explanations. I'll try to briefly go through this. FDA has the authority under federal FDA to ensure that advertising of prescription drugs is not false or misleading. Before 1997, the regulations required that direct-to-customer advertising includes a brief summary. You know, that conversation during the or that really small
side effects include, but not limited to. You're right.
This was difficult to achieve in broadcast formats on television and radio, and had in a limited time, leading to the practical restriction on such advertising. So these were things why they should or should not do them. These are kind of leaning towards why you should not. Limited information. That was consumer protection. There were significant concerns about the impact of direct-to-customer advertising on consumer health decisions. FDA aimed at protecting consumers from potential marketing, uninformed, and misguided medical choices based on incomplete or biased information. The focus was to ensure that consumers understood both the benefits and risks of, and you hear these things now, benefit, risk, things like that. This is the best one. This summarizes everything. Medicalization of the human experience. Critics argue that direct-to-customer advertising could lead to unnecessary medicalization of normal life experiences and conditions, encouraging people to seek medication for issues that may not require it or could be managed through other means.
That is 100% happening. That's happening because Americans want to get fixed passively and they want to get fixed now, right? Versus covering a process of, hey, what am I putting into my body? What type of activity am I doing?
Medicalization of the normal life experience.
Yeah.
How about a cold? Is a cold a normal life experience?
Yeah. Do you need medicine? Is it going to help you? It may help the symptoms for a little bit, but at the end of the day.
And again, this was the reason to or not to direct to consumer advertising. Patient-doctor relationship. There was apprehension that direct-to-consumer ads would disrupt the traditional doctor-patient relationship by creating demand of specific drugs, potentially pressuring physicians to prescribe drugs that might not be the best clinical choice or most cost-effective option for the patient. Inform the complexity. So prescription drugs often come with complex information regarding the use, side effects, and conditions. FDA was concerned that presenting this information in a consumer-friendly manner in a short advertisement could lead to oversimplification or omissions of critical details, especially in a broadcast media. And this is pre-internet, typically. And the other final concern was legal and ethical concerns, the balance between commercial free speech rights. So this is in favor of advertisers. They have free speech rights. And in the need for public health, offset was a significant issue. Before 1997, FDA's stance was more restrictive, ensuring that any advertisement completed with stringent information disclosures and the rules to prevent misleading the public. So again, these things, in my opinion, increased by being able to advertise direct to consumers, increased the number of prescriptions that would be filled. I'm going to scare you into taking this drug. Err on the side of caution. FDA says that, there's guidelines that said you should. What do you choose? I want to be safe. I don't want to be feared into taking the medication. I got some other examples of...
Hold that thought. I need to use the restroom. Okay, so we were talking about direct marketing to consumers, driving the number of prescriptions getting written.
Fits the formula.
So let's go back. Let's circle back and let's apply this to the COVID vaccine. So instead of I guess what I'm trying to say, your hypothesis is, instead of, which they did directly market it to the consumer, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson, what was the other one? Johnson.
They went to the wayside. I think the only ones left now are Novavax, made by Novavax, which is the one that's not made by our RNA. So if you are a mRNA fear of that, Novavax is the one that is not genetically altered. And by the way, in my opinion, if you had COVID or you took the vaccine, you got injected by an mRNA product. So we got to wait 20 years to figure out what the hell happens after that. Because we talk about side effects of drugs and long-term. So
right.
We're all swimming in the same petri dish.
Right. So they used, number one, direct marketing, but then you add the fear component onto it as well. Right. And so let's go back to the original question. You elect not to get vaccinated and to take an early retirement. Was that decision made because of you don't think it's safe, or because you just simply are afraid of what you don't know?
I think both of those are true. And I think my experience over the few years I've been in pharmacy, you ask yourself, what happened to drugs like Tagamet? What happened to drugs like thalidomide? What happened to drugs like Propulsid? Oh, they were pulled from the market because after being on the market a few years, they
What was
caused
wrong with Tagamet?
cancer.
No shit.
I think that's what it was.
Huh.
I may be wrong, but
now they say the proton pump inhibitors can cause dementia at later stages of your life. So the omeprazoles and which shit, I can't function without 40 milligrams of omeprazole a day.
We don't know. We don't know for true what's going to happen, but it'll come out. So with that, and the idea that I didn't have a choice, the idea that I had to listen to my family, I said, I had to listen to my family. My family is everything to me.
Sure.
And I think I learned as a dad that you don't have do you ever think of stuff your dad told you?
I've said this 100 million times on this podcast. My dad was like Nostradamus. I wish I hung on every single word my dad said. I do. I wish I hung on every single word that he said. It took me till I was probably 30 to realize he knew everything.
My dad told me something that I'll never forget. And at the time, it was like, he said, if you go into a flower factory with a black suit there's no way you can't come out of that with a speck of something on you. And it was in the context of who you hang around with.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
I wish I would have listened and hung on every single word my dad said to me. 100%. I was 30. I might have been a little bit younger. I might have been let's see, it's 2025, 2010. That's 15 years ago. I was about 30 or 31 years old when it hit me like a ton of bricks. It hit me like a ton of bricks.
I remember
My dad, something had happened with my friends, and my dad told me over and over and over again, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And here, they all got in trouble for gambling. All of them. And he told me, I remember he had his hand around my throat. and every time he would make a point, he would bang my head into the wall. I'll never forget it. And he kept saying, they're gonna get in trouble. My head's banging against the damn wall. And sure enough, every single one of them ended up getting in trouble back in 2010 at some level for gambling. And it hit me, and I started analyzing, things that he said to me. And I'm like, and another thing that he would always say to me is, I'll show you cemeteries and jails that are loaded with guys who think they're tough. And every single guy that I ran around with that thought they were tough is now gone. All of them.
Oh my gosh.
Every single one of them.
Frank, I remember the first time I saw your dad. I was no taller than that microphone stand, and he was outside playing catch in my neighborhood with a guy named Joe Mike Kalia, athlete. Your dad was a catcher, right?
Yeah.
And I'm over there watching. These guys throw this ball like 1,000 miles an hour. And I was standing right next to your dad, and he said, Chuck, you should probably move. He knew my name. I was shocked that this man who was probably 18 years old, and these were thick people. I mean, they were like...
My dad had tree trunk legs.
Yes.
Yeah, tree trunk
and he was the
legs.
nicest guy.
Yes.
The nicest. You just look at his eyes and you go, he's a nice guy.
Very, very patient. I'm blessed. I was very blessed to have him guide me for as long as he was here. I really was. And there's been many times that here, that's like anyone, if your dad's gone, you're like, man, I wish I could pick up and ask this question, but
I've talked to my sisters many times over the years, Georgianne and Joanne, and they say, I wish I could pick up the phone and call Mom.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I don't care. I just want to hear her voice.
Yeah. But there's been plenty of times where I would definitely want his advice, and there's times where I purposely make decisions that I know my dad wouldn't make. And it's,
your dad gave you a double standard. I'm going to tell you what to do, but maybe I did something different.
100%. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Let me think about that one.
Well,
yeah. Okay.
What I'm saying is my dad, would give me some advice that I know that he sometimes didn't follow. Right? And what dad doesn't do that? What dad doesn't, because he wants you to be better than he was.
Of course.
Right.
I remember my son asked me for a black leather jacket to wear. He grew up in the same community of people that we did, the same people you talked about there. No longer. He said, Dad, I'm asking me, Dad, I want a black leather jacket to wear. And I said, no fucking way. Because he wanted to be like the other folks. You know what I did? Probably 40 years before that, asked my dad, could I have a black leather jacket?
Yeah.
So this is like in the 70s. Right. And here's my son in 2000. And it came back to me like that.
Yeah.
I gave him the same recital my dad gave me. You know what I did? One of the first days I retired? Bought a black leather jacket.
Here, I tell my son, I tell all my kids, I'm like, guys, I wish I would have listened to Poppy. I can't tell you how many times I wish I would have my life would have been so much easier. He knew, he had been through it, he had done it. And I think the wise kids are the ones who realize that at an early age.
Frank, one of the things I admire about you is I don't know a whole lot about you, but I have an understanding of your life path. as a person in the community, I mean, this is the first conversation I've really had with you,
Right.
but I have an idea of your life path, and I admire how you carry yourself, what you pass on to other people. I've listened to some of the podcasts, and I think everybody needs to come in here for a therapy session. I mean, you just open up, bless me, Father, for I have sinned, and it's just revealing, and what a gift and a talent that you have. I mean, you're a journalist. You are actually a journalist.
I could talk, I just can't read and write very well. Here, I really appreciate you saying that. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy diving into topics that I don't know anything about. I enjoy diving into what makes people tick. 99.9% of the time, any success story went through some serious turbulence in order to get to where they're at. And I like to watch that stuff unfold, right? And then I like to take that type of stuff and that type of energy and then apply it to whatever I'm doing, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the training, whether it's, sales, whatever it is, because there's common denominators in
Oh,
success.
absolutely. I've heard you talk about success stories of people that have been at the lowest part of their life.
Yeah.
The love of my life, Angela, went through major, severe depression and anxiety in the 70s. No one, what the hell is post-traumatic stress disease or syndrome?
Right.
She went through that for years. We got married, and I had to make a decision. Like, am I going to, look at the mirror and see what I'm about, or am I going to look at the person I said I'm going to be with you for sickness and health and whatever? And together, over years, we've gone through whatever families go through, because we all go through different things. And she has taught me how to be a loving person. Our family is together because of the love, and sometimes in a really quirky way, keeps us together. So everything I am, and I'm just very thankful for my family.
Listen, without them.
So I've listened to one of the most recent podcasts, and it was the gentleman that had bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
And you were speaking of SSRIs, you were talking about how do you get off this medication and all that. I wanted to respond to that just briefly. So ketamine is one of the treatments that helps reform your neural pathways in your brain. Treatments given IV. You familiar with those?
I've seen them give my daughter an IM injection of ketamine prior to them putting her to sleep. And it was the most horrific thing that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Wait a minute. The actual procedure of getting the dose?
When they gave Gemma ketamine, Gemma laid back, eyes wide open. The secretions increased, so the tears were coming out of her eyes.
That's terrible to watch.
I can't believe they've made us a part of it. And then you would hear her going, and then the anesthesiologist looks at us and she goes, I'm crying. And the anesthesiologist looks at us and she's like, I think it's working. And I'm like, you fucking think so? I mean, my wife held her while she did it. She had to get some dental work done.
How horrible.
So I'm thinking they're going to put a mask on her, let her breathe some stuff that's going to knock her out. Then they'll IV her and put her completely to sleep. That's not what they did. They ketamined her. Then they brought her back into the OR, IV'd her, and put her to sleep.
I don't understand that, but I actually watched my wife get an infusion, 3 infusions of IV ketamine.
Did she not do that?
No, because it was a slow infusion intravenously.
Okay.
And other than the first infusion, because I watched the nurse not mix
the
IV bag, and it was the density of the ketamine is heavier, and she got a quick dose. But the 2 subsequent doses were very helpful. The other modality is ETMS. And there's a place over here, I have no association with them. I actually watched in the office a patient get an ETMS treatment. And what it is, it helps restore those neural pathways. I know of this patient being on 200 milligrams of sertraline, now down to 12 and a half.
Well, my question with the SSRI is, you have the presynapse and the postsynapse,
right?
And the serotonin comes out, it binds to the receptor,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then it produces the serotonin effect, which is improved mood, okay? So now the SSRI, in between the pre and postsynaptic cleft, just leaves that serotonin in there. It prevents the reuptake back into the presynaptic cleft. So it just sits there
That's my understanding as well.
of the SSRI. So now tell me why there's no down regulation of the receptor site post synapse. Right?
I don't know.
Maybe
I should know, but I
but
can't
there
tell you
has
now.
to be, because all of the SSRIs side effects is depression. So what I'm saying is now you have the serotonin reuptake inhibition. Okay, serotonin is just sitting there. The postsynaptic cleft says, "Shit, I'm going to withdraw these receptors." Now there's nothing for serotonin to bind to. So it can't, no matter how much serotonin you have, it can't bind anything. It can't produce any type of neurogenic change.
You got me. I had a chance to.
But are you following where I'm going with it?
Yeah, so these medications that you take are not particularly made to be taken for lifetimes.
Which is my, here, I don't want to say it's my argument, it's my question.
Mm-hmm.
It's my question. Is medication in perpetuity for that patient population really in the best interest of them? Are they really getting better?
That's a great question, and no, I don't have a great answer for you.
So let's take your wife, for example. Is she on psychotropic medications?
Yes.
She is?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to change them all the time?
So currently, no. But there was a period of decades where it's like throwing horseshoes. What works? What's this? And so you just hope you get into a place that, okay, I'm good. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's right. So that's sort of the mindset. But
and I don't want to say that there's not a place for it. I'm not saying that. I'm 100% not saying that. But with Sean, take Sean for example. He had a horrible childhood. How are you going to diagnose? That's a big time diagnosis.
So before you get these treatments of the ETMS, I sat in. I've talked to these folks. It's over here on Northeast Russell Road. They're free for firefighters. Anybody in the services, police, anybody in EMS. You walk in, they give you an assessment, and what it is, it's a magnetic treatment. It's almost like a tap on the head. Take 20 treatments, and actually, I know of a patient. Walked through this with them. They're down, and it was their choice. That was the reason why they wanted to get off. They wanted to get off the Zoloft, sertraline, and now they're down to 12.5 from up to 20. But what they do is they have a database in Los Angeles that this information this is the assessment, and the brain waves that you have are associated with structural functions in the brain, and this database is of normal people. So electronically it sends information off, and it sends back the therapeutic dose of the electronic probes that they put right here on the front of the brain, and it helps rebuild the natural function at birth. So it's sort of a way to reach back at a normal state. Mm. So I know of police officers. I know of people that have been in the military who actually are there, and are technicians and nurses and doctors that have this. It's an amazing thing. It's certainly outside of the box of dispensing medications. And many times when I stand, behind a counter and all these medications are behind me, and I go, why?
Well, I have great sympathy for that patient population, and I didn't used to. I didn't. When I was looking at past medical history of a patient, and I would see chronic depression, bipolar, anxiety disorder, and I'd roll my eyes and be like, fuck, this patient ain't getting no better. Right? Because there's such a huge connection between the mind and the body. And the real question is, what's causing what? Okay. So if you look at pain, you got fast pain, you got slow pain. Fast pain is I touch a hot stove. Ow, fuck, right? Okay. Slow pain is that chronic dull ache that you get somewhere. Okay. Two separate pathways. Neospinothalamic for the fast pain.
Okay.
Paleospinothalamic for the slow pain.
Okay.
Paleospinothalamic pathway has connections to the frontal lobe, which is why chronic pain patients have the depression. Are you following me?
Close, but go ahead.
Okay. So My question is this patient depressed because they're in chronic pain,
I think yes.
right? Or does, what's coming first, the chicken or the egg? So if we can get rid of this chronic pain, does now this depression go away? Because I'll tell you right now, the first thing that happens to me when I start having chronic pain and I can't go exercise and I can't go do what I want to do,
That's a lot of pain.
it messes with my head, messes with my sleep-wake patterns, it messes with my sex drive, it messes with everything. So I know, I have that. I can relate to that part, right? So, but then the other thing is, are they having pain because they're depressed? So what am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with an orthopedic problem that's causing psychological symptoms, or am I dealing with a psychological problem that's causing orthopedic symptoms? And you have to tease that out somehow.
I don't know how you do that, but I'm a big fan of physical therapy, primarily because it's non-drug.
Well, but here's my thing. So I could look at someone and say, okay, all right, let's look at this MRI. All right, great. So we looked at the MRI. Yeah, there's some stuff going on here. And you throw the kitchen sink at this patient, right? Maybe they go get epidurals. Maybe they get some trigger point injections. Maybe, they're doing therapy and they're just simply not getting better.
Are you throwing horseshoes, or are you going through standard
No, there's standard operating procedures, standard care procedures and guidelines.
And you're not going to particularly go outside of those.
No, and you could really tell like what's discogenic pain, what's facet-generated pain, what's myofascial pain. And I'm just talking simply about the lumbar spine, just hypothetically, because that's normally where it's in the spine is where you're going to get your chronic stuff going on. Okay? Headaches. Okay? So you look at those pain generators, disc, facet, myofascial, and you target all of them, let's say. And this patient ain't getting better. And you get an MRI, and maybe the MRI is negative. Now what? Okay. So now you have to ask yourself, this could be psychosis causing.
I've heard of that.
Orthopedic pain.
I have, yes, definitely.
Right. And that's a tough conversation to initiate with patients, right? So, and then I've also seen it where, hey, you get them feeling better and all of a sudden they come in and their affect and their mood, everything changes. That's orthopedic pain that was causing psychological symptoms.
So we do what we do, and we've been doing it for a few years. And since I've retired, I've had time to contemplate these things, sitting on my back porch, drinking a cup of coffee, watching people walk their dogs. And I kind of go off the rails. I start thinking about stuff that this is all chemical that we're talking about, particularly not so much the physical therapy treatment, but the medication and what goes on inside your body. It all comes down to chemicals, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Also has a lot to do with your DNA, right?
For sure.
For sure. What if, and this is really going off the rails, you have dreams, right?
Sure.
You have dreams. What causes you to have dreams?
No idea.
Is it chemical? Do you think you have dreams of experiences that people in your genetic line actually experience? It's chemical. And sorry if I got too weird on you.
No.
But it's chemical. It's all chemical. What you think, what you dream, it's all chemical. There's no way it cannot be. So do you dream of things that maybe your ancestors dreamed of? Do you dream of things that chemically your ancestors thought of? Pretty weird, but I let that one go for a while.
Well, I think
it's all chemical. There's no other explanation. I mean, you look like your dad. Do you think like your dad? Do you dream like your dad?
Yes, I think like my dad. In one part of the spectrum, 100% the exact same way. And the other part of the spectrum, we're totally opposite. So the answer, like, yes and no. No, I'm not kidding you. Like, there's things where me and my dad, if he were here right now, that we would be right on with.
Do you ever take a Xanax to sleep and you dream? Did that Xanax?
If I take a Xanax to sleep, I ain't dreaming.
So what cut it off?
I went into too deep of a sleep. If I take a Xanax to go to sleep, I'm going to be tired the whole next day. Benzodiazepines I take it only in the worst case scenario because I'm non-functioning the next day.
Really?
Yeah.
No. What's the dose?
0.5 milligram. But here, Chuck, I wake up 5 in the morning. I'm at the gym. I go to work. I go to my second job. I go pick up my kids up from. By the time I get home, I don't need anything to fall asleep. Falling asleep's easy. My problem is staying asleep. That's my problem. I'll be asleep by 9:30, 9:45 every single night. Pop up at 1 o'clock. My mind won't shut off.
You're officially old. I think that's sort of. I'm 68. I think that's probably my pattern. You're
46.
46. So you're a little bit older than my daughters.
Jennifer's probably 42.
Yep.
Ashley's probably 40.
I think she's going to be 40.
Yeah.
I have 6 grandkids.
Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This was incredibly informative. I think it's certainly given listeners a lot to think about. And, if I think that the takeaway is to advocate for yourself and not just put this cookie cutter plan together for your health and right and go. I mean, you have to start asking these questions.
To that point, I think you were visualizing a physician, right and go.
Yes.
I think what I might have hopefully inserted into that practice is that even when that physician writes and goes, there's someone in the middle saying, just because you wrote it, that patient's not going to get it. And that's the crime.
Well, because
every time a prescription is dispensed, in my opinion, it's a crime because the anti-kickback shield that manufacturers, insurance companies, and PBMs get, call your senator. It's got to stop.
Because ultimately,
drug prices are not going to go down.
The doctor's ultimately just a suggester.
Exactly, 100%.
The guy that went to school for 10 years is just suggesting something, and then somebody behind a computer, or what I'm envisioning is the hand on the Godfather that's holding the strings. They're the one that's going to really determine what you're going to take. And it's all driven by money, and it has nothing to do with your health.
Yes, but I do think there are the good parts that exist in this system. There are good parts. So, for example, milligram morphine equivalents, the PBMs stop that. So when you come in and get an opiate, if it knows that patient has been on opiates too much and too long, it'll stop that prescription.
Right.
It won't let it get filled. Prior authorizations, same thing.
Right.
But, those high dollar medications you hear advertised on the news, on the TV, and journals, 80% of those are because, hey, do you ever see commercials for generic drugs?
No
money in it. There's no money in it.
Yeah. No. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. This is incredibly informative, and I've been dying to talk to you about this whole entire thing, and it's been good, and it gives people a lot to think about.
Thank you, Frank.
All right. Good stuff.